All right, good morning, everyone. We're gonna finish this whole section this week, and I'll have a test for you next time I see you in here. Right? On well, you know what it's on. In lab, we have we're gonna learn the muscles over the next 2 weeks. Practical. And so on Current Cloud, there'll be a muscle function, which you guys can do anytime outside of lab, and then the muscle anatomy that we'll do in lab. And I'll put it up there and open for everyone. And some people like to go through it on their own and then come to lab and go through it again, or just come to lab and we'll go through it. That's what it was designed to do, is to do it in lab. But that's the deal. For the next 2 weeks, you guys will do the muscles Current Cloud, and you'll finish that quiz by the end of 2 weeks before you take the practical, just to help you learn the muscles. I put up a lecture, 2 lectures this weekend on the muscles. You see those. I go through every major muscle in the body, and then we'll do it in lab over the next 2 weeks too. Any questions there? Not a test, right? So after this lecture, you guys will have online. You'll have everything that you need to be ready for that test. All right, with my recorded lectures and then in person. All right, so muscle. I left this stuff online for things like going through the major muscles, what they do, and things like that. And I left all the other stuff. And so today we'll talk about, we already kind of went through how muscles contract. I'll just review it real quickly, and then we'll get into what powers your muscles and look at muscle force and a couple of diseases and such. So that's the plan. So just to review, hopefully you guys got it, but I labeled everything. The thick filament is the myosin. That blue one is the actin. And that's, you got just tons of them in your muscle. Just in one muscle fiber or cell, just all these little thin and thick filaments. And if you work out, you make more of them. If you have bigger muscles, you have less with smaller muscles. And so each one of these gives you the power that's going to shrink the muscle, contract it. And in this configuration, the muscle's ready to go, but it's not contracting. So you can see up there that tropomyosin, that orange rope, is covering up those little active sites, those little blue circles. And that head of the myosin, that green head that's cocked back, that wants to attach to those little sticky sites. But it can't because the damn rope's in the way. Tropomyosin's in the way. So this is just floating in the wind, but it's in the cocked position. It has already used ATP, your energy. See, it's broken it down into ADP and P. It's already broken it down. ATP, ACE, breaks it down, and it cocks this head back. So it's like a rubber band that's stretched. It's ready to go. And what is going to begin muscle contraction? What has to be added to this in order for this to be able to touch that? Oh, who knows? Sodium? Oh, somebody tell me. Come on. You guys have no idea what ion has to be in there in order for the muscle to contract. Yes? Calcium. Y'all didn't know calcium was in? Wow, okay. You guys need to study because it's a big thing. I mean, let's talk about this reticulum holds calcium. It releases calcium. Calcium binds to troponin. It's going to make the tropomyosin get out of the way and make the active sites sticky. Yes. Goodness. Yeah, so calcium gets washed in there and it's going to cause those sticky sites to be exposed. The head of myosin will attach and it will, a power stroke, it'll move this way. And because it's stuck to it, it'll move the thin filament parallel to the thick filament. And doing this will float away. And so then what is necessary to attach to this head of the myosin in order for it to disattach to the thin filament? So what needs to attach here in order for this to break free? Anybody? Yes. Thank you. ATP. So ATP comes in, attaches here, and then it's going to cause this to break away, and then this is going to break down. It's going to cock it back again. And as long as there's calcium in there, it'll do it again and again and again. Yeah, cool. And then when you're done contracting this thing, I'm done, I'm gonna rest after my workout, calcium is sucked away from all this. The calcium is all pumped into the sarcoplasmic reticulum and stored, ready for the next time. And when calcium is put away, that rope covers over those sticky sites, and this damn thing is just floating in the wind. It can't attach anymore. So calcium is washed over it. It's going to cause muscle contraction. Then you suck the calcium back. It's going to cause the muscle to stop contracting. Yeah. And what begins, where's the calcium come from? I'm looking at this slide up here at the beginning of this thing. It's stored in these sacs, these sarcoplasmic reticulum, all these kind of sacs. And it's just calcium stores. And on the surface are these calcium pumps. When you want to relax, it takes energy, but you're going to pump the calcium out of the muscle and store it in these sacs. And then when the signal comes from the nerve, the signal is going to rush down, and all these little channels will open in those sacs, and the calcium will leak out, and it'll wash over the muscle. It'll cause the rope to go out of the way. Muscle can contract. So there it is, kind of slowed down. Whole thing. And if you remember, stepping even further back, what causes the signal to make the muscle contract is that nerves, so motor neurons, they come from your brain and spinal cord. And remember, they branch onto muscle fibers. So one nerve goes to dozens or hundreds of fibers, called a motor unit. And at the end of the nerve is the little synapse. I talked about how when the signal comes down, the electricity, then you're going to have calcium channels open, and then these little sacs. You guys remember what the neurotransmitter is that's going to be released? Neurotransmitter is released that causes to bind to the receptors. Yes? Acetylcholine. Yes, acetylcholine is the chemical that's released into this cleft. On the other hand, on the other end is the receptor for acetylcholine. And so once they're bound with acetylcholine, it's like, dude, it's time to go. Like, we just got the signal. And then that signal is going to go over the muscle fiber, down the T tubules, get deep in the muscle, and release those calcium ions. And that acetylcholine has to be destroyed, or else you're going to be constantly contracting. So acetylcholinesterase, an enzyme, breaks down acetylcholine and recycles it. All right, there's some review for you. Stuff we learned. All right, so what happens after you die? Well, you're no longer breathing. It's kind of part of the dead part. And so what's going to happen is that there's going to be no energy to store that calcium in those sacs. Sarcoplasmic reticulum. So the calcium just leaks out. So the calcium is going to make those active sites naked, and the myosin head's going to stick to it. Then we have an issue because it can't on-stick because there's no ATP because you're dead. You're not making ATP, it's all gone. And so you end up with the muscle locked in position. So without any oxygen to make ATP when you're dead, the heads can't disattach and you end up stuck and the muscles become rigid. You can see it happens a few hours after death. As soon as you die, you're still flexible, but then after a few hours, you get rigor mortis. And then eventually bacteria will break it down and then you'll be able to move again. So there's a period of time you have rigor mortis. The butchers know this too, age meat, things like that. All right. All right, you guys, went to the gym already. Not me. Just lucky to make it here on time. But creatine phosphate, you probably heard of. It's something that is real. It's let me just tell you this: your muscles need tons of ATP, tons and tons of energy, right? So where does the ATP come from? Well, you guys know you break down sugar, right? The whole thing we went through, respiration to get ATP. But immediately, like if you just had to run, like if a bear came in this room and you had to run, you are going to use the ATP that's already in there. It's ready to go. It's stored in your muscles as ATP, and you immediately use it in order for your muscles to contract. So you guys could get up and run right now. But you're going to use up that ATP within seconds. So if you had to jump up and do a sprint, you have enough ATP to go for seconds, not even a minute, and then it's going to run out. All right. So the next step that we have is that in our muscles is creatine phosphate. And it is just like ATP, but we can't use it directly for this. You need ATP, but creatine phosphate is going to have that phosphate on it, that high energy phosphate, just like ATP has that high energy phosphate on it. And it will be used to recharge ATP. So after the ADP comes off, the energy has already been gone out of it, creatine phosphate will add a P and make ATP, so it's recharged. So we have like this rechargeable battery system. ATP is what we need to make our muscles contract. And we got a bunch of it stored, ready to go. But damn, it goes so fast. And then the next thing we do is we have creatine phosphate. And it's how many times more? 4 to 6 times as much of that. And so every creatine phosphate can recharge an ATP. And that's what you do. If you had to get up and sprint, your ATP is the first thing you would use. You would use it to contract your muscles. But then you run out. And then you use your creatine phosphate to recharge the ADP. And that's cool too. Yeah, about 10 seconds, I think. This timing seems so little. We have such little energy, stored to go in this form, the immediate form. So yeah, so taking creatine phosphate, I don't know much about how good it is in training, but theoretically it should give you the ability to work out more strenuously. But I don't know if consuming it, how it gets to the muscles. Like I don't know all that part, but in your body, in your cells, in your muscle cells, there's creatine phosphate, and it is going to recharge your ATP. And so your muscles, that's what they do right now. You guys are sitting there, you're not very aerobically active, and you've charged up all your creatine phosphate because you're sitting there, you got time, you got energy. And then in times of exercise, you use up your creatine phosphate. So you used it up, now you're resting, and your body's gonna use that time and that oxygen and energy to recharge up your creatine phosphate. You guys will use up all that creatine phosphate as soon as you start exercising. And then after exercising during recovery, you're going to recharge it up. It takes ATP, but it's going to recharge creatine phosphate. So you guys got it. Creatine phosphate's a lot like ATP. It can be charged up with that phosphate, and it just sits in there ready to recharge your batteries. Questions there? So you guys know what creatine phosphate is? It's going to make ATP. It's going to make your ADPs into ATPs ready to be used for your muscle. All right. Well, once you use that up, if you're starting your 5K, you're starting a marathon, my God, I mean, this is just the very beginning. Just like barely got off the stops, and you're like, I made it into it, and that's all gone. Creatine phosphate's gone, ATP's gone. You got to start breaking down sugar. To make your ATP, you got to burn sugar. Or you can burn fats or protein. You got to start using energy. And the way that we store energy, I mean, you guys have a blood glucose level now at a certain level. Depends if you ate what you ate for breakfast, if you ate it all. But you've got a constant blood glucose level, right? And so that glucose can be immediately sucked in the bloodstream into the muscles and used, burned to make ATP. But you also store sugar as glycogen. So you can see that picture there. Remember, glycogen is, every one of those little circles is a glucose. It's a long chain, a long branch chain. And that's how we store immediate energy. And so you can look at this cool picture of a muscle. You can see these little granules are actually glycogen. Yeah. And when you do carbo loading before a big aerobic exercise that you're going to do, you store more glycogen. So the glycogen is sugar stored in your muscles, especially your liver. You've got tons of glycogen. All of your organs have glycogen. It's how we store sugar. And so once you use up the ATP, once you've used up the creatine phosphate to make more ATP, then you start burning sugar to start getting that ATP. And one way, of course, is the glucose that's free in our bloodstream. We just use the glucose. We always have glucose. And then we've got stored glucose, which is glycogen. All of your muscles, your liver, it can be broken down and released. All right. So I like this chart. It kind of shows you that when you start a strenuous exercise, you use that ATP, you got it. But man, there's not much of it. You can't go very long. And you got creatine phosphate. You got like 4 to 6 times the amount of creatine phosphate. Every one of those can recharge an ATP. So that's going to give you more ATP. But then, it's gone. You've used it up. You continue to go. And then you can start burning sugar. And anaerobically, even if you guys sprint, you can barely get enough oxygen, into your lungs because you're running so fast. Your body can still burn sugar anaerobically with glycolysis and give you like 2 ATP for sugar, just a couple. So anaerobic, you can automate, you don't even need to be breathing. You can just burn the sugar. You guys know it builds up when you burn sugar anaerobically. Lactic acid, right? And then hopefully, if you guys are running any kind of a race that's beyond like a 50-yard dash or 100-yard dash, you start aerobically metabolizing and using oxygen to burn the sugar. And then instead of just 2 ATP, you can get like 30 ATP or more, a little bit more. You guys got it? That's what you're doing. Anaerobic and aerobic. Just depending. Hopefully you're running a long enough race or playing a long enough game that you're aerobically, you got enough oxygen pumping through your bloodstream, through your lungs to be able to burn the sugar efficiently. But if you're just sprinting or just doing weightlifting, doing as many reps as possible, you're going to be anaerobic. You're going to be getting energy, but you're going to have this lactic acid buildup that you're going to have to pay off that debt. Yeah, and just to review, back to chapter 4 or 5, something like that, for last test, is that when you burn sugar, you can get ATP even without oxygen, but you only get 2. You only net 2, right? And that happens out here. You guys can do that. You can do that, and you do it. You absolutely do it. But if you can breathe enough oxygen, get into your bloodstream, and if that blood can reach the muscles, if you're not contracting too much, if blood can reach the muscles, that oxygen can be used to really burn that sugar completely. So you got 30 some ATP, let's say 34 up here, and then all that sugar turns into carbon dioxide, which you breathe out, and water. And the energy. And some heat too. Whenever you burn sugar, you're giving off heat. And so your muscles give off a lot of heat if they're making a lot of ATP. All right. So hopefully that's a review. Hopefully you guys know without oxygen you can burn sugar. That's cool. But you're going to build up this lactic acid. And then you got to kind of like get rid of lactic acid when you have time. But with oxygen, beautiful. You burn that sugar, you get every little ounce. You guys know the efficiency? How much ATP you get? How much of the energy in the sugar is converted to ATP? Like half, around half, I'm estimating, which means half of it just goes into heat, which is released. But we burn sugar very efficiently. Your car is like 10, 20% of the gas that you burn goes to moving the car. The rest heats up the oil and friction and all that. So we convert sugar into ATP pretty efficiently because we do it carefully like this with using enzymes. We carefully extract that energy from the sugar into ATPs that we use. Oh, so cool. All right, and then I noticed the last thing on this is myoglobin. Let me see, put a place marker. I'm going to talk about myoglobin because your muscles actually store oxygen too. All right, you guys take a look at this. See how you feel about it. This is how it works. This is how your muscles are getting the energy to perform. And so you see from the bloodstream, the blood's going to carry the oxygen. It's going to carry some glucose. It's going to carry, let's say you're working out on treadmill, it's been half an hour, 20 minutes, and you're starting to burn fat. So there's fatty acids in there you can use. Even if you guys, you can even burn proteins, amino acids if you have to. All these things can enter the cellular metabolism to give you the energy. So let's take a look. See ATP in the middle, bright red? So that's what we're talking about. You need ATP. That's it. It's the only thing that works for your muscles. You need ATP. You can't use creatine phosphate. You can't use sugar. You can't use anything. You can only use ATP. So that's at the center. And so I see here that you have stored ATP in the muscles. You burn it up quick. Then I see you have creatine phosphate. And that is going to donate its phosphate to ATP to recharge the ATP. So that's cool. You guys are sitting here resting. You've got enough creatine phosphate in your muscles that you can use it for 10 seconds or so to recharge your ATP and you can perform. And over here it says myosin ATPase. That means that simply right here in the myosin, ATPase breaks down ATP into ADP and it cocks that head. So that's why you need it. And then I see calcium ATPase. That's when your muscles relax. But it takes energy to relax too, obviously to contract. But it takes energy to relax because you have to pump the calcium and store it. And that takes energy to store it in that sarcoplasmic tissue. Cool. And then I see you have glucose right from the bloodstream. So as long as you guys have blood sugar, you can do a workout. And then stored in the cells, you have glycogen, which is hundreds of glucose molecules. So if you need to, you can break down the glycogen into little glucoses, and that's your energy. And glycolysis doesn't need oxygen. It's going to break a sugar to 2 pyruvates and give you 2 ATP. So glycolysis will give you a couple ATP to allow you to keep performing. But hopefully you have oxygen coming in through your bloodstream, which means your heart and lungs are working good enough to deliver oxygen to your muscles. Your damn muscles, if you're really working them, they kind of squeeze the blood vessels. You know? They don't allow the blood to move easily, so you're working against that too. But if oxygen is getting to your muscles, then you can burn the sugar, continue to burn it, and get another 32 or 30 ATPs out of it. So then you're doing good. Now, if you can't get enough oxygen to your muscles, if you're running this sprint and you can't breathe enough to get oxygen to these muscles, you'll do glycolysis and lactic acid will build up. So you remember, hopefully you remember that story. You build up lactic acid and you're going to become acidotic. You're going to have acidity in your body. It's going to build up and build up. There's some thought that like building up lactic acid is going to like hurt your performance and eventually make you fatigue and stop. But the book talks about how that's kind of, we don't really completely understand that. But you know lactic acid builds up if you're anaerobic. And once you're resting, your liver can convert lactic acid back to pyruvate, and it can put those together and make sugar. So it takes energy, but you can get rid of that lactic acid and make sugar again. But for the time being, when you're running that sprint, you're building up lactic acid because you have to in order to keep the process moving, to make more energy. And then I see also fatty acids and proteins can also go into that, the Krebs cycle. They can go into that. So you can make energy from fatty acids and amino acids can enter that also. We generally think about just the glucose coming in. You can also come in from different angles too. Woo! All right, I'm talking to you. Maybe I lost you on some things. Any particular questions here? Looking at this, do you kind of get it? I'm just kind of reviewing metabolism and then adding how the energy comes for performing muscles. No, all right, you're all just taking notes. All right. Okay. So your muscles, like I say, they need oxygen to really get all that energy, right? Well, in your blood, the oxygen is carried by hemoglobin, right? Red blood cells, hemoglobin carries it. So hemoglobin binds oxygen and then it releases it in your body where you need it. Well, a cousin of hemoglobin, it's very similar, is myoglobin. And myo means muscle. And this is found in your muscles. So your muscles have myoglobin. And it's just like hemoglobin, but it's a little stickier, holds on to oxygen a little tighter. And when you guys are exercising, you're really running, oxygen levels get really low in your muscles, and myoglobin will release some oxygen, and they will allow you to keep burning sugar. So it's like having extra scuba diving, extra tanks of oxygen in your muscles that you can use in emergencies. So you don't use this normally. You guys are sitting here, your myoglobin is loaded up in your muscles, and you're not using it. You're using the oxygen from your blood. But if you guys really push your muscles, the myoglobin will release that oxygen and give you a little extra. Will allow you to burn a little more sugar. And so that's what makes, kind of gives the reddish color to meats. I mean, besides capillaries of blood, makes muscles look reddish. And then myoglobin is a reddish color too. And so you'll see, I mean, now they put dyes in meat in the grocery store and stuff, but And so think about it. Now, do you want myoglobin to release the oxygen easier than hemoglobin or harder? You know, is it less likely? Is it more sticky? Does it hold on to it more? Look at this picture. See, myoglobin loves oxygen. See that little, it's like giving it a hug. And then in hemoglobin, it's like, oxygen, be free. So the deal is that myoglobin holds onto it tightly, so that it only releases it under really low oxygen conditions. So if I'm working out my biceps, and I just keep going, I keep going, I'm gonna have really low oxygen levels because I've used that up, blood's not getting there because I'm working too hard. And then the myoglobin's like, oh, damn, we need this, and it releases it. So myoglobin really holds onto that oxygen until it's like really low levels in your muscles, and then it releases it. So it's a beautiful thing. It's like a safety in there. It holds the oxygen for emergencies. And then once I recover after working out, I can rebuild my myoglobin. I can charge it up again. So yeah, that's so cool. Hemoglobin in your blood is going to carry most of your oxygen in my bloodstream, right? Then in my muscles, I have myoglobin holding on to oxygen too. And it only lets it go when I really, really need it. All right, give me a lot of good stuff here. This is a lot of important, good stuff. All right, so if you guys work out, that recovery period afterwards is where you can repay all those debts. Hell yeah, you used all your ATP. That's gone. Oh, creatine phosphate? I used that all up like hours ago. Myoglobin, I used up all the oxygen. All right, so when you guys are done like a strenuous workout, anaerobic, you just were doing sprints, your body has got to pay that debt back. So I got a credit card. And so afterwards, as you're relaxing, that oxygen will recharge your myoglobin. The creatine phosphate will get recharged. You'll fill up ATP. Hell, even the glycogen will go, that you burn in your muscles will be recharged again. So yeah, your body does what it has to do to survive. If there's a bear, you got to sprint. You got to be ready. So it will put on the credit card. It will use it all, and then hopefully later you can repay that. So that's this oxygen debt idea. Yeah, you can do sprints. You can do those kind of things, and you pay it off when you can. And then if you're doing anaerobic, like I said, you're doing these sprints, lactic acid is built up in your body. And then it's your liver, enzymes in your liver will convert lactic acid back to sugar. That takes energy. It takes energy to do it. So at the time when you're actually exercising, yeah, you're going to use oxygen to get rid of your lactic acid. Forget that. You need energy, it's survival. So you wait until you're done exercising, and that built up lactic acid will be broken down into sugar again, and then you can use it. But it takes energy. Like I said, it takes ATP to make lactic acid back into sugar. And you ain't thinking about that when you're running from that bear. You need to make the ATP for muscles, and then later you can get rid of lactic acid. Any questions there? I hope you're following me. All right, training. Let's talk about training. Let's see here. Yeah, it'll be about 5 minutes. So if you train, you can train really your muscles 2 ways, really. You guys can train in order for your fast twitch, bulk kind of thing, where you're trying to get maximum power, or you can train more for aerobically, let them work for long periods of time, to make your muscles more aerobic in order to do more distance activities. So, what does training actually do? What are you doing in the gym? Well, if you want to come off the blocks, quickly in football and hit, get this kind of, if you want to run sprints, kind of this high intensity workout where you're just giving it all for a short period of time. It's not very aerobic. You don't care about that. You just care about performance pretty quickly. You're going to make, how's your body going to react? How can the muscles work better? Well, if you're working just this kind of quick, super powerful exercises, you don't worry about oxygen. It's going to be glycolysis. You want to be able to work quickly because you don't have time to get oxygen to your muscles. And so if you look at a muscle before and after this kind of training, this high intensity weightlifting, something like that, you're going to see more enzymes for glycolysis. So the muscles are reacting by being able to use glycolysis quickly to get ATP, even without oxygen, just to give you the ATP. Now, with aerobic exercise, if you guys start by doing distance and using a lot of time where you're aerobically working out, the oxygen is being delivered to your muscles, you don't need glycolysis enzymes as much. That's not the important thing. The important thing is delivering oxygen to those muscles and burning sugar, because you got oxygen. If you're running a marathon, you're not sprinting, you're pacing yourself, so oxygen can be delivered to your muscles, so it can burn sugar. And so the muscles, if you looked at them before and after this kind of training, you would see more mitochondria and more capillaries. So the muscles respond by delivering more blood, which has the oxygen, and making more mitochondria. That's where you really burn the sugar completely. So if you're working anaerobically, you don't care about the oxygen part, because you're not burning sugar completely. You've given up on being able to deliver the oxygen. So that's the difference. You can have, if you biopsy a muscle before and after you have this aerobic workout regimen for 6 months, you will see a lot more mitochondria, a lot more blood vessels, because your muscles have responded to exercising and be able to have oxygen delivered to the muscles. All right, this whole idea, you asked about the question about cramps, is that why do you eventually fatigue? Like if I started a race and I've not trained at all, I would do great in the beginning. Oh my God, my steps would be high. But eventually, how far would it take? I mean, obviously, pretty quickly, you feel tired. And then at what point do you just give out? And this idea, there's a lot of psychology in this. So this is athletic psychology, sports psychology. But the idea is what causes us to fatigue. And obviously, if you guys are running sprints, you can't do it for more than one. I don't know. You can't, I don't know, not very far. Right? I guess the 100-yard dash, you can do that 5 seconds, 10 seconds. But longer than that, you're going to start fatiguing and eventually even giving out. And like I said, psychology plays a big part of it. But then you're also, of course, you're going to build up lactic acid if you're doing a sprint, and that's going to slow you down, we think. If you're vigorously working out, the muscles are going to prevent blood from getting to that because the muscles are squeezing the blood vessels. And there's ideas that ion imbalances, so calcium and sodium, potassium, all those things cause the muscle to be less likely to contract. Yeah, so it's very interesting. What causes fatigue? And then y'all know what a cramp is. A cramp is going to be a contraction that just hurts. It's just a sustained contraction, right? You're going to have fatigue and cramps at the same time, of course. And again, we don't know exactly what causes it, but you can read in your book a little bit about it. And then I found this too, you guys. Again, some of you are really interested in this, and you can explore it in other classes, and you can explore it on your own. But this is a paper that I saw that just says that your SR gets leaky, leaks calcium with fatigued muscles. And so remember that cephalosporin reticulum is supposed to suck up the calcium quickly and hold it, and then muscle contraction is to let it go. But in this case, you have calcium that kind of leaks out, and that's going to be one cause of fatigue. All right. Yeah, I think I'll leave you on this one. I've already told you that muscle contraction produces heat. And in desperate situations, you guys shiver. And shivering is muscles going for no reason at all other than to warm you up. So if you use your muscles, it's going to produce heat, and the blood is going to carry that heat to the rest of your body. So clearly, you guys know, you get on the treadmill, and you get off like 20 minutes later, you are hot. You can feel your skin. You know that you produce a lot of heat. You get red and sweaty because your body's trying to get rid of that heat. All right, so I've given you guys a lot so far. A lot about energy, like how we power these muscles. And so I hope you get it. If you guys have any questions, you could ask me. But let's take a break because it is 8:35. 8:36. So we'll start again at 8:40. 4 minutes. Relax. Talk among yourselves. Whew. Little muscles. It happens when you're fighting a cold. When you're fighting, like you think about your cat or something, or a bird, they try to make their head big so they look bigger too. You know, the fur, they want posing for being, you know? And us, it's for insulation. Oh, no, I was gonna say, when you're scared, it kind of goes back to making yourself a little bigger. You know, if you had more hair, it might just look bigger, just stand up, you know, to make it look more imposing for the predator, you know. And that's also for more insulation when the cold will come up. Doesn't work well for us. If you're not much more hair, you know, but other animals, much more like that. All right, everyone. So muscles, if you were to really study muscle physiology, there's a lot to do, right? There's the exercise end of it. Oh yeah, and we'll look at breathing rates and as you're like on a treadmill, look at oxygen consumption, things like that. And on this end, the physiology is just basically like how does muscle contract, etc. It's done in a lab, usually where you take out a muscle fiber and then you put it in a petri dish and you can attach electrodes to it. You can make it contract. And so that's how you kind of study muscle contraction if you really get into it. Yeah, frogs or mice, yeah, no, humans that much, but you can take out the muscle. In this case, they probably anesthetized it. It's not probably but they've isolated a muscle, and then you can put electrodes on it. And in lab, we can put electrodes on your skin and make you twitch. So the electricity will go in, it'll hit the nerves, and it will excite the nerves, and it will make the muscle contract. So normally it's your brain sending the signal, but we can go in between the brain and your muscles and electrify those nerves and cause contractions. It's as if the brain sends the signal, but we can get in there. And if you just take a muscle out like this, you can put these little needles in it. You can give it electricity, and it's going to, just like the nerves, it's going to cause the muscle contraction. Yeah. So sure, done things like this, you hook it up, you got a little force lever, and you put it on the bone maybe, and then you have electrodes, and you have some kind of recording computer nowadays that is going to record what happens. And when you give a muscle a signal, it's going to twitch. It's called a muscle twitch. And that's all that happens. It just twitches. Like clearly, as you guys move, as I hold the laser pointer, as you guys do walk on a balance beam, we're not twitching, right? So we take all these little twitches and we convert it into nice, smooth movements. And we'll talk about that. But first of all, just basically, you're going to give it electricity, and a little bit of electricity does nothing. You're going to hit a point, this threshold, where there's enough electricity to cause it to twitch. So it's all or none. Not like a little twitch or big. It's whether it gets, you hit the threshold. Let's say this is the threshold. If you hit that, it's going to twitch. So this is sub-threshold here. Not enough juice was given. The muscle does nothing. It just sits there. But if you give enough juice so it hits some kind of threshold, then it's this all or nothing twitch. The muscle twitches and relaxes. So it contracts and relaxes. It's going to give you that kind of a look on the graph, right? Up and down. So the muscle is going to contract and relax. That's that little twitch. And then you hit it with electricity again, it's going to twitch again. So that's how muscles work. They get electrical signals and they twitch. Yeah. So let's break it down a little more. Actually, you give the signal for the muscle to twitch, there's always this little delay. There's a delay. And I'll say a couple of milliseconds, the delay. And then the twitch happens. We call that the latent period. It's going to be some vocabulary for you need to know. The latent period is the time between the signal and the actual twitch. And there's a lot happening in there, right? You see the choline has to go across the synapse. You've got to depolarize the muscle. It's got to go down the T-tubules. The sarcolemma reticulum has to release the calcium. The calcium has to bind to the troponin. The troponin has to move the tropomyosin out of the way. And then, so in that time is going to be this latent period. And then you can see that twitch. You can see the contraction, relaxation. That's the twitch. And then when you hear refractory period, that means the time after where the muscle can't be stimulated again. So there's always this refractory period where the muscle, no matter how much you stimulate it, it's not going to go. And then it's going to be ready after that refractory period. Right. We're going to get to this in the nervous system too. Same thing, like an action potential. That's going to, it's very similar how signals are carried down nerves. But this is a muscle. We call it a myogram. Any myo is a muscle, right? It's a myogram, it's a muscle gram. All right, and let me ask you this. I got my biceps here. Where is it going to be strongest if I'm trying to curl? It's going to be strongest when my hand is fully extended, my arm is fully extended, about midway, or when it's almost there. Like where am I going to have the most strength? And it turns out, for most muscles, it's that intermediate stretching in the middle. And if you think about it, if a muscle is too stretched, there's not going to be that many cross bridges, right? Because they just barely are hanging out. In the middle, there's more cross bridges, there could be more power. When your muscle is already almost contracted, there's not much room for it to go. So there's this optimal stretching of the muscle for the maximum power. It's intermediate, as you can see, in the middle, and it goes down as your muscles are too stretched or too contracted already. And the reason is you're maximizing the cross region. That's where the power comes. And so, as I mentioned, we have multiple muscles that seem to do the same thing. That's a very common pattern in our body. And really, there's no two muscles that work exactly the same. And some work at different body positions. You really do the same action, like adducting your legs, bringing your legs together. You've got at least 4 muscles there that are doing it. But some of it do it at your legs are spread farther apart, some of them are almost close together. And when you try to like walk up 2 stairs at a time, it's very awkward, it feels weird, it's hard, your muscles are not really working that well, right? Instead of taking 1 stair, it's because they're stretched too much. And there's not that many cross connections. So your muscles work optimally at an intermediate stretchiness. All right, one special thing about we're gonna do when we do the heart next semester is that cardiac muscle, your heart, that is going to, the more to stretch, the more stronger it's going to contract. So the more you stretch it, the stronger it contracts. If it's just stretched a little, it just kind of puts in half an effort. And the reason is this. The reason is because your heart has to get rid of all the blood that comes to it. And when more blood comes back to your heart's going to be stretched, your heart works harder to eject it. And when your blood pressure is really low, a little bit of blood is coming to your heart, you need less energy. So there's a characteristic of cardiac muscle called Frank Starling's law, where the more stretched it is, the stronger it contracts against it. Okay? That doesn't happen in skeletal muscle, but in cardiac muscle. All right, so twitching obviously is not the way to go. If I were to pick up a cup of coffee in those little like styrofoam cups, I just twitch to the coffee everywhere, right? But I can smoothly pick it up. Hell, I can even smoothly put it back down. And so there's a beautiful ability for our muscles to work delicately or work strongly is amazing. And how our minds neither, they're not like always, oh, I pick up myself so strongly. We have the ability to really delicately move instruments. So how do we do this? Our muscles have the ability to lift that big weight in the gym and also lift up that pin very lightly. 2 ways. One is called summation. And let me tell you this. If you send a signal to a muscle and it twitches, it's going to contract and relax, right? But imagine you send a signal and it contracts, it's starting to relax, you hit it again with another signal. It's actually going to go a little bit higher. It's going to sum. And so the frequency that you tell a muscle to contract, it's going to sum. Only up, not that much, but it can go like twice as strong, and that's about it. Yes, so I'll show you a picture of how this works. So summation is sending the signal before the muscle has a chance to completely relax. And the second way is this. My biceps are huge. It's a huge muscle, and if I'm picking up this light little laser pointer, I'm going to recruit like, 1/16 of the muscle fibers to do it. If I'm starting to pick up a weight in the gym, I may recruit 80%. Or if I'm like maximally trying to lift something, I can recruit like all the muscle fibers. So that idea is recruitment. Just like if you're gonna move a small apartment, you may recruit a couple friends. You move your house, you may recruit like everyone you know. So how many fibers are used in the muscle is going to give you a grade response too. And remember, it's motor units. It's what nerves are turned on. Because the nerves go to many fibers, hundreds of fibers. So your brain decides the heavier the weights, the more nerves are going to be stimulated, so you have more muscle fibers being used. Beautiful. So that's really, this is the key, these 2 things, and how we meter how strong a movement is. Take a look at this, make sure you understand it. This first one is just a single twitch. So the S is a stimulus. Send electricity, twitch. Now notice the second one. We have sent a signal. See the signal? It twitches, but before it goes back down, we hit it again. And it's going to sum. It's going to give a little more. And we can do that, and the muscle gets stronger with an individual muscle fiber. And then, yeah, you can see it's going to sum to a point. And then if we just stimulate the hell out of it, just constantly, it's called tetanus. And that's when the muscle is just maximally contracted. And that doesn't happen normally in humans, in people, in muscles. But we can do it in the lab. We can just hit it with electricity and make it seize up. Yeah, but normally we can sum. We can send the signal. So your brain says, dude, we got to lift a heavy weight. And it's going to send the signal rapidly. Yeah. All right, so recruitment muscle units, just to make sure you guys got it. I'm sorry, motor units. A motor unit is one nerve, and then this shows it nicely. Those dark ones are part of that one motor unit. And so in a big muscle like my biceps, I have these motor units where I have thousands of nerves. Each nerve goes to thousands of fibers. And my mind decides which motor units to turn on. So I turn on 2, 3, 4, 100. Depends on how much strength I need, how much power I need. Yeah. Just another really cool illustration so you guys can see this and kind of get it. See the nerve coming out of your spinal cord? Your brain spinal cord. That's going to be signaling skeletal muscle. So skeletal muscle is under your voluntary control. So you can see. Here's a bunch of fibers that are going to be contracted. Yeah. Remember that the motor units are really small and delicate muscles, like your eye muscles. So one nerve goes to like 10 or 12 fibers. But in my quadriceps, one nerve goes to thousands of fibers. So whenever you have more control, your motor units get smaller. And I like this illustration too. It's like the third one. But see, they're colored different colors. It shows you different motor units. Yeah. Cool. And we'll see if we can do this in lab. We have to be 6 feet apart, absolutely. So it's going to be, if we could do an experiment. I got these electrodes that shock you and they make your thumb twitch, you know. And if we give you just a little bit of juice, nothing happens. But then you hit that threshold, you have a little bit of a twitch. And as we increase the juice, the amperage, it's going to be a stronger and stronger thumb twitch. Because at the beginning, a little bit of electricity, we just stimulated the really sensitive nerves. And then as we increase the juice, we start stimulating the bigger, stubborn nerves. And eventually, if we give you maximum, like the whole nerve is stimulated, and you have the maximum power. So that's the idea with the recruitment, is how many fibers can we recruit to do this? Yeah. If you're picking up a Q-tip, you only have to recruit a few fibers. But if you're going for big weight, you got to bring out the big guns. All right, you guys got it? I like it. Oh yeah, and as I say, small little axons are more sensitive, so if I were to stimulate that, you would have just a small twitch. But as I increase the juice, I got you. All right, one thing about muscles is that they're never completely relaxed, especially your posture muscles. You always have muscle tone. And tone is when your brain is going to always stimulate some of the muscles. And if you're passed out or you're in a coma, then you don't have muscle tone. You just lay there like a jellyfish. But normally, you guys, your postural muscles in your back, your head is being held upward, all these things you don't think about, but your brain is sending signals to those muscles. And it's not the same motor units, it's alternating motor units so they never fatigue. And so as I stand here, oh my God, I got muscle all over my body are working to keep me standing like this. And my brain is turning on motor units and then letting them rest and turning them back on. And so there's always a muscle tone that allows you to have posture, stand upright. We'll see that too, the blood vessels too. The blood vessels have smooth muscle around them. If they were all relaxed at once, you would just collapse and die because your blood pressure would be nothing. So there's always a tone in your blood vessels so that they're always contracted a little bit to keep your blood pressure up. If they relax, your blood pressure drops. And so there's always a tone in your blood vessels. There's always a tone in your muscles. They're never completely getting out, especially your calf and your postural muscles. All right, let's talk power. Let's talk power and muscles. So it's very simple. The power in your muscles, the force, is proportional to the cross-sectional area. I don't care how long your muscle is. I care about what is the cross-sectional area. How thick is that muscle? Simply, that's it. And again, physics is interesting and all. But here, take a look at the equation below. I see that both these first two have the same amount of force. Even though this one's longer, I don't care. If it's longer, it can shorten more. It's got more length to shorten it, but it gives you the same force. And the thicker muscle gives you more force. That's why you see someone that's very strong in the weight room has bigger muscles, cross-sectional area-wise. And I excuse the pounds and using pounds instead of kilograms, but 50 pounds. So a big muscle like your quadriceps has hundreds of pounds, obviously, that it can per the whole muscle, but 50 pounds per square inch. Think how big your quads, your calves are, and look how many square inches it is, and think about how much pounds it can lift. All right, and I think I alluded to this, but some muscles look like a feather. You look under your deltoid, you look under your soleus, some other muscles in your calf. You look under rectus femoris, this one down in your quadriceps, and it looks like a feather. And why is that? Well, the reason is that this long parallel, this might be your biceps or your sartorius, something like that. It's very long and parallel like this. It can shorten a hell of a lot. This one can't shorten as much, but what you have is a whole bunch of short fibers. That's going to increase your cross-sectional area, giving you more power. So that's why we have this pinnate structure, is that, I think I have another, this really shows it. See that? Okay, you see that? We've increased the cross-sectional area by making a bunch of short fibers like at an angle connected to that tendon. So you'll see here some really strong muscles of yours. Obviously, you have standing on your toes, your whole body weight is being transmitted. So in your deltoid, it's so hard because of where the joint is here, where the weight is way out there. It's a very strong muscle. So these muscles you need a lot of power will be shaped like a feather, pinnate. Yeah, cool. You'll see this when you get that chicken breast, there's like that underneath the one breast, there's like another muscle. It's got that tendon in the middle. You all know. Even if you didn't, again, no feedback, but trust me. If you look at, you buy those chicken tenderloins, they have this little tendon in the middle. Yeah. Birds, interestingly, all their muscles are on their chest, right? The breast, not much on the back. It's because when they fly, they're very stable. The weight's in the front, and even the muscle that brings their wings back is in the chest. It goes up through a little hole to the back. Bats have like back muscles and front muscles like us. So they fly like this. They're not that graceful. But birds, all the weight's in the front and this big pectoral muscles. Good stuff. Yes, so pinnate muscles give you a lot of power, but they only move a short distance. Long parallel muscles give you not as much power, but they have greater total shortening length. If you start out with a longer muscle, you can shorten it more. But your short muscles, they can only shorten a little bit. Yeah, and so in our body, we have a mixture of different types of muscle depending on what our needs are of our evolution. Yeah, this is showing a big, long muscle able to shorten more proportionally, right? Yeah. So look at that long one there. You can see here, this might be your sartorius. It goes all the way down, little strap-like muscle, all the way down your leg. So when that shortens, you can move your leg quite a distance. If it starts out short, it's going to contract a much overall shorter distance. All right. Very good. All right. So here's some terms you need to know. They will be on the test. Isotonic versus isometric contraction. So to me, isometric means same meter, same distance. So that means there's no change in movement. So if I push against this wall, I'm using my muscles. I'm using ATP and energy, but there's no movement. So that's an isometric contraction. If you hold a pose, You know, in yoga, one leg, you're using a lot of muscles, but there's no movement. So isometric, same meter, no distance change. Isotonic means the muscle is going to change weight. Not the normal thing. And then, so there's two types. We talk about concentric is when it shortens. That's typical. We're doing a curl, holding the weight, and the muscle shortening. It's using energy, right? But it also takes energy for me to put that weight down. If you got a real heavy book, you're going to put it on the counter. That takes energy too. So my muscles are, they slip, you know, as they go. They slip, but you're still using those cross bridges to help slow that weight down. So you can see we call that eccentric. So just some terminology. You know, isometric, no movement. Tonic means there's movement. And then concentric is shortening it. Eccentric is lengthening it. So all these are muscle contraction. They all take energy. You can tell the difference there. Cool. Cool. All right. Well, I like this. You guys have in your bodies fast twitch and slow twitch muscles. So your muscle fibers are not all built the same. And this is what I'm talking about, how beginning of class I said I could never win the Boston Marathon. I don't care how much I trained, if I devoted my life, if I quit my job and started training, never could, never. It's like, oh, well, you can't get anything you want. You can't, because there's some genetic limitations, right? And one of them is that really, I have a friend who's an ultra marathoner. She runs like 100 miles in the desert. It's just incredible. And so her muscles has lots of slow twitch fibers, meaning that she can go a long period before they fatigue. And then fast twitch would be good if you're, you know, very rapid, very powerful muscle fibers. So you have different kinds of muscle fibers, and it's mostly genetics. There's been some training. You can get a guinea pig and put it on a treadmill, and you can look at the proportion of fast and slow twitch. You can stain them to tell the difference. Fast twitch are bigger and some are smaller. So you can see with training some slight changes. But man, you have people are born with different proportions of fast and slow twitch muscles. We're talking about fibers. So there are fibers within a whole muscle. And so if you look at my calf muscles, I've got more slow twitch fibers. They're constantly being used as I walk, as I stand even. But then my pecs, it's more fast twitch. It's looking for power. So yeah. And then in your book, they actually split it up into slow twitch. So slow twitch is not as powerful, but it can go all day long. So it's very aerobic, lots of, it's the dark meat in the chicken, and lots of blood vessels, and lots of mitochondria. It goes all day long, like calves. Fast twitch is going to be the power. And that is very glycolic, no oxygen, but it's a fast, rapid, powerful contraction. And they have an intermediate one too, where it is fast twitch, but it's has a little more ability to work aerobically. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, I like this. We can take a look at this. So let's look at some of these variables here. Let's see, what's that? Contraction speed. Obviously, fast twitch is fast, so very fast. Slow is slower. Yeah, let's see. Well, obviously, the fast twitch is glycolysis. So you don't need oxygen. It's just going to move like that, yeah. Fast twitch is big fibers. Slow twitch is small fibers. Lots of mitochondria whenever you're slow twitch, not so much in fast. Yeah. And then the color. Yeah, I'll talk about that when we look at a turkey or a chicken breast, white meat, thighs or dark meat. So we can look a little more if you guys, again, this is fascinating stuff, and you can do a muscle biopsy on a living person. You can put a needle in the muscle, you can stain it, and you can look and see like, hey, what's my proportion of fast and slow twitch compared among athletes, things like that. Yeah. And so you can see, look at the difference in diameter, how big the fast twitch is, bigger fibers. And you can stain because you'll have more glycolysis enzymes in fast twitch. They don't need oxygen. Cool, so there's a definite difference. And you guys in your different muscles have different proportions, and then genetics-wise, you guys have different proportions. So indeed, Thanksgiving coming up. That's when we're on break. Well, I'll see you the week after virtually, but Thanksgiving coming up next month. This month, next month. All right. But when you look at a turkey or a chicken, they have fast twitch muscles in their breast because turkeys and chickens don't fly south for the winter. All right, they can fly. Turkeys can fly up in trees. Some people didn't know that. Chickens can fly for sure, not that far. Like if you scare a chicken, they will fly, but if you keep chasing it, eventually it'll just walk around because they can't fly anymore. So they only have so much energy in this fast twitch. So the breast muscles are for flight, and so they're fast twitch and they're not used for very long. But a duck, they fly south. They fly distances. So they're all dark meat. So that's the deal. White meat is fast twitch. It's fast twitch, and they can do it for a while, and that's it. They're done. Slow twitch fibers, like in the leg muscles of a chicken, they run around all day long. So that's a big, cool example. That's pretty obvious. Then I show you some fish too. Yeah, there's some fish too. Tuna, very dark. And a tuna swims its entire life. It doesn't sleep. It swims. And so it's always using, talk about, you need a slow twitch. Imagine a marathon that you never stopped. Like you started the marathon, you did it for decades, you never stopped. That's what they do. They just swim in the ocean all day long. So clearly you can see that dark spot, but there's lots of myoglobin, and it's going to be a very slow twitch muscle. And then a pike, I'll pick earlier name, they are sit and wait and they're fast twitch. They go after their prey and then they sit back. So they're going to be very lighter. Anyway, you can kind of look at this all over the place. Dark meat is going to have lots of myoglobin and capillaries, and it's darker. Then fast twitch will be lighter meat because it doesn't have that myoglobin in it, because it doesn't have to store oxygen. All right, so you guys, you understand fast twitch and slow twitch. So exercising. Now clearly we can change our muscles, like our bone reacts, you know. Our bone will get thicker when we exercise, we get thinner when we just sit on the couch, right? So our bones react, obviously our muscles react. And your skeletal muscle goes through hypertrophy, which means it gets bigger when you work it out. And conversely, when you don't work out, it atrophies. So atrophy is shrinkage, and hypertrophy is getting bigger. So the muscle cells don't divide and make more of them, they simply get bigger. And so there'll be more fibers to put in it, so it can be stronger. But you don't normally make more muscle cells. In fact, your skeletal muscle doesn't heal very well. If you lose a chunk of muscle, there are some satellites, some stem cells that can wake up and make some new muscle. Basically, you lost the muscle. It kind of just makes a divot. So unlike bone, which will form new bone beautifully, muscle doesn't really divide, skeletal muscle. It can, I'm saying, limited. So working out at the gym is chronic overload. You're going to overload your muscle. Obviously, you want to alternate muscle groups between days, so there's time to heal. But your body's going to react by making bigger muscle fibers. And if you're working aerobically, you're going to make more capillaries, more mitochondria. So when you guys have a different lifestyle, you have different muscles. They react to it. But again, training doesn't really change the proportion of fast to slow twitch. That is kind of genetic. So marathoners and sprinters are born. They're not really. Training helps, but there's limits. Elite athletes need to be born with certain things. All right, but there are, like I said, there are satellite cells. We call them these stem cells, so that if we wake them up, they can make new muscle fibers, new muscle cells. But it's really limited. Just know that. All right, talk about muscular dystrophy. It is sadly, it's a disease, a genetic disease with no cure. And what happens is, I give all the props to actin and myosin. That's most of the proteins. You got a bunch of smaller proteins that are very important, but they're tiny percentages. And one of them is, this dystrophin here connects the muscle to like the tendon, kind of simplifying it. And if you don't make that, the muscle slips. It doesn't hold on, and then the muscle starts atrophying. So sadly, this is a genetic disease that you can see by ages of 3 and 5, you're not walking and you're wheelchair bound, your muscles just atrophy. Because you don't make this one protein. You have a genetic mutation in a gene that makes this one protein in your muscles. Now, there's different kinds of muscular dystrophy. So if you take a look at this kind of there's many lines of evidence up here, but you can see how the muscles just waste away. The muscles just, looking at histologically, the muscles waste away. There's no fixing it right now. We're not really good at fixing this genetic disease. All right, muscular dystrophy, yep. All right, now finally at the end, I'm going to talk just real briefly about smooth muscle and cardiac muscle. So smooth muscle is, looks like this. It's not striated, but it has the same actin and myosin in it. It's just not in the same, they're not as organized, so they don't give you as much power. But smooth muscle is what's found in your gut and in your blood vessels, muscles that raise the hairs on your arm, and they're intimately connected. Here's a view of smooth muscle, like from the side view and the cross section in your gut. And there's a lot here to kind of break down. You can read more about it in your book. But the same thing, calcium, ATP. But smooth muscle doesn't fatigue as easily. And you think about like your uterus or the muscles that move your pee from your kidneys to your bladder. So they're resistant to fatigue indeed. And they even have the ability to, well, I'll tell you about it. They can even kind of lock. Like muscles, like normally if I lock my biceps, I'm using a lot of energy. The smooth muscle can kind of shorten and just kind of stay there. It's kind of cool. So here we're seeing, see how disorganized it is? Like skeletal muscle is awesome. Ooh, all this thin filaments, thick filaments. This thing you can see is just, it can shorten, but it doesn't have the power. And another thing is, skeletal muscle needs a nerve. Smooth muscle also responds to hormones. So epinephrine, if you have adrenaline, you're going to have smooth muscle, and the capillaries of my gut are going to shut down because they're listening to that. And then in childbirth, oxytocin is given. That causes the smooth muscle in the uterus to contract for those contractions. So they listen to hormones, they listen to each other, and of course, electrical stimulation too. And so when you swallow something down your gut tube, it's actually the stretching of the food. The stretching causes the muscle to kind of contract against it. So stretching causes it to go. So it's a lot more sensitive. Other things can make it contract. And here you can see it can lock too. Yeah, you can, you have it, obviously, it's going to be in many places in your body, your urethra, your ureter. Oh, the deal is this, smooth muscle can divide. It's called hyperplasia. So hypertrophy is getting bigger. They can't. So your uterus starts out small. If you're pregnant, it turns huge. And so smooth muscle cells divide like crazy, no problem whatsoever, unlike skeletal muscle. All right, and then cardiac muscle, I already told you one thing about it. The more stretched it is, the stronger it contracts. It's only found in the heart. And here's a cool fun fact. It has a refractory period that's long enough so it can never go in tetanus. So you don't want your heart, you want it to contract, and you want a period of time where it relaxes, contracts again. So you don't have these sustained contractions because that would be bad in your heart. So it just goes beautifully for your whole life. And it has actin and myosin fibers that are striated, and they kind of go around that big nucleus in the middle. So it's just not as developed for pure contraction, but obviously it works well. Yeah, you can see the striations there. So they have actin, myosin. They have sarcoplasmic reticulum, calcium. They all do the whole thing. And they're resistant to fatigue. Imagine if your heart got tired. That would suck. Oh, sorry. No, it has to go all the time. So it has lots of mitochondria, lots of glycogen. This thing goes forever. So your heart goes as long as you're alive. So it's very resistant to fatigue, and it won't go through tetanus. Now, one thing about cardiac muscle, it doesn't repair very well either. So if you get a heart attack and part of your heart dies, it turns into a scar. Like it doesn't repair itself. And so people who have a heart attack, they carry around a piece of dead heart that just kind of carried around. It's a problem. So the future is getting stem cells to regrow that part of the heart. But normally, their heart there's some stem cells, but only a few. So it doesn't really repair itself. Yeah. Good. And then as you get older, look at that, by age 80, half of your muscle mass. Oh my God, as you get older, your muscle turns into fat and connective tissue. But you can work out. Look at this old guy. He looks great. I don't know if that's Photoshop, but you can continue to exercise to keep that, but your muscle turns, you become less and less strong. You're more likely to fall as you get older, as your muscles get less fatigued, you get a broken hip, things like that. But it's found that exercise definitely into your old age. The problem is your joints hurt as you're older. You don't want to exercise, so you need to staying healthy is the best thing that you can do. All right, I finished. So good, you guys. I'll see you in lab, or I'll see you for the test. So I can see you for both. So study hard.